Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me here on intentional living. Not just intentional living, but for me, in my personal belief, I added faith in who I am, not what I've been told. And for many of us, I believe there's an awareness that's coming about into your being about how you've been, raised and told many things all of your life. I'm a firm believer you're the product of your environment. And, it's like you only know what you know. And I know that sounds very simple, but that's the reality of it. And the other part of that is in your early years, when you're being taught things and shown things and you're exposed to things, your subconscious is literally writing that program that's going to continue to play out through the rest of your life. Like everything I think from what I've read and understood before the age of 7, and I'm sure some even after that going into early adolescence. So, um, but that's not me bringing all that up to put this in a place of judgment at all. So where you want to be with this is, well, I understand um, that was the best that like your parents knew at the time, your grandparents or whatever other family members were involved with you. And definitely where we don't want to be sitting is in a victim seat and holding judgment in that and using it as an easy out when we refuse to go and look at ourselves within and going, well, my father is the whole reason I am the way I am, or my mother, whatever, or Uncle Joe, whatever that sounds like, or my sister. And this is not me saying to you that you are not um, entitled to your feelings. But what I am saying to you is for you to be able to get to the place of intentional living, you have to go through healing emotions, letting go of past trauma, healing that, forgiving of others that have made you feel this way, and getting you all the way forward completely out of your past living and past thought living into the now moment, which is then going to allow you to really take a better look at yourself. And you'll be doing that even as you're letting go of the past. And you'll be more at peace. Your mind won't be so chattering in your head. And you'll get clarity and understanding. And for me, what I want to do is start a little bit about my past so that you'll see, hey, she is like me, or I am like her, or we have something in common, and show you that I am human and understand exactly what you're talking about. And that's how I do a lot of the work that I do here at Spiritual Relics. I do a lot of mentoring, healing work, classes, spiritual consultation, all of those things out of unconditional love for the betterment of us as a human, and being able to become more than we ever thought was possible. There's all great people out there teaching these days, lots of great teachers, and we're all going along, in the same place of, it's not impossible. The impossible is possible. And there's been great people even before us that have said that. Like I mentioned Saint Francis of Assisi in one of my other shows here on the network, Telepathic in Nature. And one of the great quotes he is known for includes, "The impossible becomes possible when you do these things." And I don't remember the entire quote, forgive me. But I found that was impressive for someone from 1200 and the early 1200s, to make that statement. And he must have really had some profound things happening for him at that time, and things shifting for him in his mindset. So you see, we're not the first ones really to do this. And I feel like what's happened is we've had to go through this shift in mindset, like wave, right? to get to where we are now, where I feel like we're really on the cutting edge of making profound difference in our lives and living intentionally um, with what resonates with us, most definitely. So let me go back here for just a minute and kind of um, start with me. So I started my life the day I realized that I was able to be more than I've been told. And I was able to understand more than I've been told. Kind of like some aha moment. But even in my early life, even though there was a very controlling household, parents who were very fear driven, judgmental, um, did a lot of gossiping about our whole family, and other things that I won't even get into because those are more personal for me, but just a lot of control, fear based, judgment, you know, and a lot of pointing the finger at other family members so that nobody was really looking what you were doing at. For me, that's like Jesus saying, why you worried about well, the speck in your brother's eye when you got a beam in your own, right? But you know, for them, as long as everything was presented fine to the outside world and we looked like the Brady Bunch, then everything was cool. But I'm here to remind you, I understand that no one knows what goes on behind in your household, behind those closed doors. And some of that is even things that are in our own mind, beliefs about ourselves, judgments of ourselves, even based on trauma, or maybe not trauma, but just things we believe, things we've been told, or based on treatments of from others. We make assumptions. And let me tell you, assumptions get you nowhere. Okay. So I can't really give you the day or time. I just felt like I was being led to a different way of doing it. I feel like my soul was coaching me. Once I was able to get out of that house and start living my life the way I thought I wanted to. Ow. So, but that's okay. At least it was a move out of that and into my own household. But what hindsight now, looking back at that, even there for a long time in my life, what was I doing? I was still playing that subconscious program, and I was maybe not as critical as they were, maybe a little less, but I was still having judgments of people. I was taught that very well. Um, Gossiping, um, figuring out how to get ahead and all those things. And I definitely made sure that when I left that household and I got married and had my own job and all those things, that I was stable because I was not going to need them for anything. Is my mindset because I didn't like my life as it was before. Now, um, I feel like there was a part of me, like I said, that was still participating in those behaviors, but yet I knew something was there, and I couldn't really put my finger on it. And like I said, it took me quite a while, several years before I started acknowledging um, certain things within. I did start making some analogies about the world. I can remember being 27 years old and talking to a couple friends that were over at my house, and they just looked at me like I was nuts because the statement I made was, who's to say that the people in the insane asylum, that's what I called it, the insane asylum, are insane and we're the stable ones. I said, really, that's all we know that we've been told. And they just looked at me. And I think for me, that was the first major statement of making awareness that I was believing, everything I had been told. And I had been lied to a lot in my life by lots of people. and that's okay. I understand that now. And I also am a believer that everything you experience builds you into the person that you are to become who you need to be, even if you can't see it in sight at that moment. I believe your soul and your higher self are working with you and the universe to get you nudged along um, to the place meant for you to be more than what you are in that moment. And I did have experiences as a kid that were, like if you want to call them supernatural in some way. And for me, they kind of didn't feel like over the top. Like they didn't, they just, I guess for me in my life, they felt kind of normal. So, I also realized that I had to accept the circumstances, in my life at certain points of it, but I had faith I would escape, like that. And then coming out of my first marriage and whatever happened, I always had, faith and I always like reinvent and I always came out pretty good, and I didn't understand at that time what I was doing. I was doing like intentional, purposeful thought and intention, um, even prayer, but I really wasn't doing the work yet, on myself. But maybe I was kind of, but not like I do now, not like knowingly, consciously. I think maybe subconsciously, some things that were happening and shifting in my life and people were being brought into my life that helped me get myself to a place to be able to fully do that. Um, so like I said, I got out of the house. I was standing on my own, and going on. It was many years full of material living. Okay. So when you don't know how to feel better, um, right, and you'll start, uh, I had a job making very good money. My husband had a job making very good money. Um, we were, we had bought our house, we had brand new cars, we had all of these things. We would go on trips and, whatever we needed. And that was great. But at the end of the day, I still didn't realize that I was not making any real ground as what my human potential was and what life is really about in living. We tend to feel sometimes that we get here and we are living, but really all we're doing is kind of meandering along through whatever circumstances there are and emotional things to die. And that's not really living to me. So a lot of material things going on there. A lot of I know this now looking back, worried about how I looked and, you know, being attractive and all of those things and just being over the top with that. And so I felt like maybe that was at least one thing that I felt good about myself in my younger years. So, but I needed to see that what was going on the inside was not pretty, um, and was very fearful. And the other thing I noticed in my life that started coming up was things about religion and the Bible. Um, I remember thinking to myself, how Mary Magdalene, I always felt this, got a bad rap in the Bible. Because, when I was raised being a prostitute, oh, feel like, what? So, and I felt like they just portrayed her that way. And I felt like, she was really a good person. I felt like she was actually even a healer. And I felt like she actually was a part of Jesus's life, which was more important than probably portrayed to us. That was just one big thing for me. So moving forward, one day someone asked me, if you could spend the day with anyone who is no longer living, who would it be? And I said, Jesus. And they just looked at me because I'm not a person that was going to church at the time of my life or any of those things. And they said, Jesus. And I was like, I want to sit with Jesus on a park bench. Me and Jesus like this, boom, boom. And I want to get some answers about what the real skinny was. So I always wanted that. And I kept that in my mind for a long time. And but I always had faith in my ability to do the best that I could for myself and my family as far as, being a mother and providing. And I'll tell people, I'm not a perfect mother. I know that. I know that with my older children, I parented different than I did with my younger children. I was older, so it does make a difference. But I did the best I could in those moments, um, where I was and even in my life, right? So I started to figure out that expressing myself about abuse and trauma really started to let my mindset shift because there were years that I kept silent about many things that I finally didn't do that anymore. And once I did that, of course, it didn't change anything from what had happened, but at least it gave me a say so. And I was no longer this silent, fearful person. And then what happened is I had to find myself in a position of letting that go to some degree. So what I did at first, of course, is okay, now I've acknowledged it, but then I just kind of let it go because I really didn't know what to do with it. I'd never been shown how to do what needed to get done. And as time goes on, I eventually find myself in positions as I'm starting to like wake up a little bit to things. I start finding myself in positions of reinventing myself like in my career 3 or 4 times and yet not fulfilled, making great money, but not fulfilled. And I know now looking back that those career moves um, were not going to last for long, although I thought they were each time, right? I had long term goals, but that's not where God really needed me. I think He was just moving me, and the universe was doing this little dance with me to keep me going until I got to a place of really being able to acknowledge some things about myself. So, probably about 9 years ago, for the first time, I walked into a metaphysical store. I didn't even know what a metaphysical store was. I was like, I didn't even know what it was, but I was drawn to it and I went there. And it was like, I couldn't get enough of it. And I didn't know what was going on in my mind. Like, am I going crazy? Are you nuts? Are you, because it's just like I couldn't learn enough. I couldn't get enough of it. And it just seemed like, wow. And at the time, um, I started taking it all in and some things started making some sense. And I realized that I did have some people around me that knew more than I did. And it made it a little easier to start to grasp some things. But hindsight now is I was learning from their perspective. And their perspective was still from a place of trauma and brokenness. And that's okay because it's what I needed in the moment. I'm very thankful for those people who were in my life at that time. And it helped me at least be able to realize that you don't have to believe everything you're told. You don't have to believe everything you read. You don't have to believe everything you see, everything that's portrayed on the news, all of that, everything. And I was like, wow, this is a whole thing. So I then am so into this and involved that even though I'm still working a job in management, that's all I'll say, is I decided to open my own metaphysical store. Actually, I started it in my house. Um, and I opened a store and I just knew from the moment I walked in this store that this was the place. I just knew it. I mean, literally, I didn't have to think about it. any of that. And so that kind of stuck in my head too. Okay, you just knew that. How did you just know that? Right? I didn't know anything about running a store. I didn't know anything about being that customer service person, but I just knew that I was supposed to do this and that it was important and failure was not enough. So I did that. And along the way, I s- I was literally just a shop runner. I was not um working on people energetically. I was not doing readings or any of those things, but I had people around me who were. And then I also had people who were telling me that I didn't understand how profoundly gifted I was. And I'm going, yeah, yeah. I'm just looking at them. I'm going, trying to see if I hear anything in my head, about that. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Okay. And sometimes you think people are just being nice. You're the store owner, whatever. But finally, that did shift. And I started to have some profound things break through. Um, I started having totally complete experiences with helping others, making profound changes in their life and their mindset. And I was like, okay, this is a whole thing. And it's kind of like the gift unfolded. And there was a time where I had to learn and understand what just happened because God was using me as an instrument to help others, to like teach and help them be able to understand how to do these things for themselves. And that's how I got into teaching the classes that I teach. That's how I got into doing what I'm doing right here, right now. And it's allowed me to be step more into my authentic self, my higher self stepping in, lots of clairvoyance and other things participating telepathically and all of those things with guidance and reassurance, no more fear, and lots of things going on, which have led me to be able to start standing and noticing my intentional living. Deciding, okay, now that you've done all that, what is it that you want in your life? What is it that's important? What are the moves that you want to make now that you may have never made before because they weren't necessary or they just seemed unimportant and now they're important for you? So you've had a whole shift in, okay, where is this going and how do I do this? And understanding that there is no wrong and everything is right. And God loves you no matter what choice you make, and the universe supports you. And you're able to be safe and feel I am making decisions for me in the best way I know how. And even with that, you're going to do a lot of healing inside. And when you do that, you're going to be shifting and looking at others in a whole new way. Um, you're going to understand why they're angry. You're going to understand why they're introverted or whatever they have going on with them. You're going to understand what you're looking at and their behaviors because first of all, you were them. You've changed and shifted, but you're not having judgment of. So the judgment goes away and there's like this compassion that comes in for even people who have caused me trauma, physical and mental. I was able to go through forgiveness in a way that now I'm not talking about I called them up and we had to hug and kiss. That's not what I'm saying. But I was actually able to let go of those memories and the triggering because a lot of people don't realize they go through their life being triggered. And so for me, I'm just now in the last year or so, 2 years, getting to the place of more intentional living. And also understanding that in my intentional living, I had put myself in a position to be doing a lot of teaching and mentoring for people. But God reminded me, what about you? You're doing all of this, making yourself fully available, but you're not really balanced in how you are doing that for yourself. And there's a piece of me that when I went through discernment and humility and, all those things that come in when you're becoming your authentic self, that I was feeling like maybe that's what I was supposed to be doing in that way. But there was a part of me that was not standing in my truth. There was a part of me that was not understanding that it's okay to be who you are and to live your life accordingly. Um, and for me, I accept everyone where they're at. Um, and for some people, that can be a little confusing, but actually, that's what we're supposed to do. There's no judgment there anymore. I don't ask people their faith. I don't ask them lots of things anymore because I just accept them as the person they are and that they are a part of who I am. We're all a piece of the whole and go forward from there. So I'm hoping that me expressing myself in this way and talking a little bit about my past, showing you where I've come from. Well, not too great a detail, but enough that you can say, yeah, okay, I understand that. Because, when someone sits and tells you, oh, do this to help yourself or do that to help yourself, you really want to know in your mind, the first thing you say is, yeah, but you don't understand. You've not been through what I've been. Okay. I've been through a lot of things that I'm not going to sit here and talk about, but I do in my spiritual mentoring and counseling and things like that because I feel like some of the best healers, mentors, and spiritual advocates are the ones who have been through the most or the most broken, they would like to call it. I think I'm mended these days, but those people who used to be considered very broken understand the depths of that emotion and what it took to get them out of that place of sitting in that victim seat and living their life in a fight or flight nature, which is definitely not neat. So, moving on from that, I just want to say that you are a powerful being of light and you are capable of anything. And when you learn that your thoughts and your feeling can help you align with the universe and the availability of all possibility, it's a game changer. It's a game changer when you start having those experiences and synchronicities and understanding that you're now looking at things differently and they're actually brought to your attention when before in your life things would happen and you really never paid them any mind because that's just so, yeah, you're not gonna, it's like these blinders on, blinders to many things. Even the universe pinging at you, trying to get your attention, saying, "Hey, over here, we're here, we'll help you." Because most people don't get out of their sensory living or 3D life. But I want to thank you for coming today for this first episode. I will definitely be going more into intentional living on the upcoming episodes. And I am thankful for each and every one of you that show up and participate. Be blessed.